Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to give everyone a few minutes to join. In the meantime, feel free to head along into the chat here on Zoom. Let us know where you're dialing in from in the world. We always like to see the reach of our webinars. So let us know where you're dialing in from. And as I say, we'll give everyone just a little while to join. We've got a few more people joining now. That's great. Give it a little bit longer and then we will kick off. Okay, hello everyone. Let's get started. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Andrew Hubbard. I'm the Senior Director of Communications here at Poppulo. I'd love to welcome everyone to this discussion today. There's not going to be a lot of slides, but there's going to be a lot of great conversation about metrics. We've called this webinar today From Metrics to Mastery, and we're going to be looking at how National Grid has transformed communications with measurement. A little bit about the webinar before we get started. Today, we're going to be looking at how an organization has leveraged advanced measurement techniques and use those techniques to enhance internal communications outputs, to drive engagement, and of course, to drive business outcomes. We're going to be looking at the strategies, we're going to be looking at best practices, and we will also be inviting you guys to share any comments, any thoughts here on Zoom in the chat as we go along. A couple of housekeeping rules. As I say, we are on Zoom. Use the chat function to share thoughts. We'll do our best to get back to any thoughts over the after the session. And a bit about us as well. Your hosts are Poppulo. Who are Poppulo? We are a leading communications digital signage software company. Poppulo's platform is used by communicators to publish, measure, targeted, personalized content around email, digital signage, mobile, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and loads more. And I'm actually pleased to say, before I joined the organization in 2022, I was a customer of Poppulo for over 10 years. So I'm really well placed actually to talk about being both sides of the fence. As I say, work with hundreds, thousands of companies in 80 countries. As well, I think it's like nearly half of the Fortune 100 we work with as well, serving great people like our guest today. And who is that guest? Sally Jackson. Sally, welcome to the conversation. It's so good to have you here. Please, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you, Andrew, and it's really great to be with you today as well. So, as Andrew mentioned, I'm Senior Manager of Content and Channels in the National Grid Colleague Communications and Engagement team. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? What I do is I work across the National Grid group, ensuring everybody stays connected, informed, and has access to really engaging content across our channels and the things that they need as well to do their job. As part of this, I'm custodian of our group channels as well, and we need to make sure we evolve and improve those over time so that they remain fit for purpose for our people as the internal and external environments change. And yeah, that's kind of what keeps me up at night, really. I've been working at National Grid since 2019, and I've been working in communications and business consultancy for 20 years now, so quite a long time. And then I think just on the kind of Poppulo point as well, I've also, like you have, Andrew, I've been using Poppulo for about a decade as well in 2 different organisations, and Andrew and I actually worked together on implementing Poppulo at National Grid, which was really exciting, and we're still using it to this day, and it's a really fundamental part of our communications channel mix, really. And what I really love about it is the analytics it provides, because measurement is something that's really important to me. In terms of National Grid, we are one of the world's largest publicly listed utilities organisations. We've got over 30,000 employees in the UK and the US. In the US, primarily in the Northeast, so Massachusetts and New York State. And we have recently refocused our strategy. So we now have a goal of becoming the leading networks company, and our kind of strengths are in the areas of transmission and distribution.
Fantastic, Sally. That's so good to hear. And full disclosure, we did work together.
So it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, it's important though, right? I think it's really important. People know that, Sally and I was very lucky to work alongside Sally at National Grid, and I think let's inflate your ego as much as I can before we start talking about the good stuff, Sally. You know this because I told you, right? I was blown away by your passion for measurement and focus on the detail of analytics. And I think the work that you did and that your team has done to have that as a core focus for everything you do communications wise in the organization is transformative. And hey, I'm not ashamed to say I've stolen all of your good ideas, using them here at Poppulo, which is working well for me. And hopefully people who have joined the webinar today can work to do the same. But let's dive into the story a bit. We'll start kind of light and then we'll go deeper into the detail, right? Give us a picture of when you joined National Grid in 2019, what was the situation with measurement then?
Okay, so when I joined in 2019, there was a big kind of communications transformation underway in terms of reset of the channels, the approach, the team was changing, and I was brought in actually at that point to look at establishing a planning tool and also measurement approach across the team. So, and actually just to say that the reason I was so interested in those areas, that having been a business partner over the years, I just realised and was really fascinated by the importance of planning and measurement underpinning everything you do in comms. And yeah, that's why I kind of fell into that world in the first place. And when I got to National Grid, obviously there was this real appetite for change and to make things even better. I mean, there was some great stuff going on already, but it was about kind of more consistency, more joined up channels. And there were ad hoc pockets of measurement. There was an engagement survey that was in place. The measurement was more focused on outputs. And then the problem that we had was that a lot of the channels that were already in place were quite they didn't really have measurement behind them. So we had channels without any analytics at all. For example, the weekly newsletter that went out did not have any analytics reporting behind it. So we just had no indication of what people were engaging with and when. So what we did was we worked to, as part of this big reset, there'd been a load of research that had been undertaken independently around the communications approach, and a new strategy had been set out. So when I came in to look at the measurement approach, we started with the strategy and looked at the 4 key areas that we were trying to make an impact with, and then looked at what we wanted to measure to demonstrate how we were going to kind of make progress against those areas. So one of the areas, for example, was around their reach and effectiveness of our channels, actually getting to people in the first place. And then another one was around our trust in leaders and leadership communications. I think that's all I want to say on it, actually. Yeah. Actually, no, I'll talk a bit about the approach as well, Andrew. I was just going to say, in terms of what we did, because I think this might be useful to people, is that we developed a quarterly dashboard approach that was just strategic in nature, that we produced once a quarter, and that was used with stakeholders and to help with decision making.
Yeah, and so that's good, and we'll dive into that later, because I think people will be really interested to see and understand what goes into the dashboard, what the data points are, where you're getting that information from, etc. So we'll hold off there. We won't go all the way in just yet.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the results then. So from where you were to where you got to with quarterly dashboards, what were the results?
Okay, so what we were doing was we were tracking progress against our strategy, and we were able to see, as we started to look over time, any impact that we're having on outcomes. Yeah. So we were still tracking outputs as well, but we started to build up this data view over time of changes in preferences, behaviours, understanding of strategy, and that kind of thing. And then we used that information to help shift our strategy and evolve it over time, and to make decisions on or recommendations. So things like making business cases for changes or even new channels to introduce for certain groups, or when making a case for how to do something differently in a big strategic campaign. In terms of the results for our team as well, it's just given us a bit more focus in what we're doing. It's backing up what we're saying, and so it's helping us with those strategic conversations and stakeholder conversations at a more tactical level as well. So ultimately, it's helping us kind of back up what we're saying that we know as communicators with data.
Yeah.
So it's helping us in everything that we do day to day, as well as that more strategic planning.
Everything starts and ends with measurement, doesn't it? Like that's the beginning and end of that cycle. And I was at the Gallagher State of the Sector report launch earlier this year, and that was one of the themes that kind of came up. Like, everything should be focused on exactly what you've described, right? Business outcomes. What's the business trying to do, right? And if we align our dashboarding, our measurement and reporting to that, our seat at the table becomes, increasingly important to executive leaders, to the board. So it'd be good to get into that information in just a minute. I realised when you in the intro you mentioned about one of the things you love about Poppulo is around the analytics and the advanced analytics. We'll talk about that, but let's do before we go into the detail. I want to do a quick poll question here on Zoom. There'll be a poll arriving on the screen any minute. Let's ask people who are joining us. If you're interested in talking to a Poppulo representative about advanced analytics and how that can help you save time and get more value out of your comms, there'll be a question arriving on the screen now where we say yay or nay. My needs are met already. Or if, like Sally and myself, you'd like to learn more and get involved, hit yes, and then a member of our team will be reaching out to you guys and getting in touch. So we'll just give that a few seconds, Sally, while that runs down. And then I'd like to talk in more detail about the dashboards, about what you've measured, and then maybe look at some specific case studies as well. Just give it a few more seconds. Okay, let's do it. Sally, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, it just made me think something you were saying then. So one of the other things in terms of the results that we've seen in our team is that actually by having access to decent analytics, or having analytics at all, but also having good analytics, it means that you save time ultimately. So, we spent, if I take the example, I'm going to take another platform that we used, and whenever we needed to gather data on it, we had to go in and manually look through and count through views and so on, and it was painstaking to get what we needed, and it just took a lot of time, and actually just having decent analytics is worth investing in, because you can just instantly get your reports and insights without having to do all that manual work yourself.
It's real time saving. How much time would you say you've saved then by having the right tools in place?
Well, by having decent analytics, we worked out we saved about 45 hours a year in data gathering.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So across channel measurement and campaigns measurement as well for our group campaigns, because it would just take a huge amount of time. I have to say, it does take time to do measurement. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You'd agree with me, wouldn't you, Andrew? But,
100%.
But it's worthwhile, because actually if you invest time in it, then it will save you time in the long run. It will save you those really difficult conversations with stakeholders who want a thing published no matter what. And it saves you a lot of difficult conversations, challenges, and just makes your life a lot smoother and easier when you come to put proposals forward, for example. If we look at another thing I was going to mention in terms of, you asked about results, was around a campaign that we looked at a few years ago around our company values. So the campaigns team led a piece around our company values, and also an employee recognition scheme where people were putting forward their colleagues. And what we saw around that big campaign was that we could see indicators that it was on people's minds, because on our social platforms, it was up there amongst the top conversation topics over that period. And I think it was amongst top 20 conversations, and obviously you get loads of operational things as well on there. So that's actually really great to get strategic corporate campaign to get that through on there. It really shows that people are talking about it. And then actually having that kind of peer recognition piece, really, we had huge uptake of that. It was almost too popular for its own good because the amount of time it took to review all of the entries and things. But it just showed the amount of engagement. We had over 1,000, I think it was almost 1,000 teams and individuals were recognised in the second year by their peers, the second year we ran it. And alongside that, in terms of outcomes, we saw an increase in the engagement survey of the value in the values related questions. So I picked out all the questions related to demonstrating our values, and we saw a 2% overall increase in those in that period.
That's great. So let me play that back. So business challenge to communications. We don't think people are connecting with our values. We don't, you know, we believe in them. We want people to understand what they are. We want people to see their work aligning with those values because we believe in them. The campaign that you guys ran was around celebrating people who were championing values.
That's right, yeah.
And then as a result of the campaign you guys ran, post measurement showed that there was an uplift in positive responses to the questions around values. So people feeling
that's right
with the values because they're seeing it and they're feeling that's fantastic. And you can report that back to executives, to the board, and then you get that backing to go ahead and do the next exciting thing, right?
Exactly.
Do you know what I really like about this introduction section, Sally? There was a bit where I asked you how much time you saved, and I realised, and this underlines what I said about you being passionate about numbers. You have data about data. By doing measurement, we're saving this much time. It's great.
Yeah, love it. Love to analysis. Yeah.
never change, Sally. Never change. Let's get into the detail then, right?
Okay.
I would love to understand more about that next step you took from where you guys were in 2019 to building the quarterly dashboard. What's on that dashboard? Why? And how do you pull the data together?
Okay, the dashboard. We are actually in the process of changing it at the moment. So because we're, you know, things move on, our strategy is evolving. So I'm actually redesigning it at the moment, which I can't share with you yet because it's not ready. But we are still talking about our rather than talking about channel reach, we're talking about connect the dots, so connect to strategy, and we're looking at outcomes around understanding and engagement in our strategy and our priorities and our vision. And then we're also alongside that looking at increases in usage of channels with the audiences that were less engaged as well. And we'll be looking at whether their engagement levels increase over the year. So we'll be looking at, for example, with our US field audiences who traditionally used our digital channels less, we'll be looking at where we can boost their usage of the channels. And we're also introducing some new channels for them. So we're going to be looking really closely about feedback around those. We're not just looking at the usage though, you know, we do ask people about what they find useful and not. So we recently did, so as part of the field rollout, we did a net promoter score, for example. So we try and look at things like that. We did originally do a communications pulse periodically as well, to gather some additional insights to help make the connection between what we're doing and the outputs and the deliverables and the outcomes. So trying to kind of see, do people in the organisation have a, you know, do they connect those two things together? Are they changing what they're doing or thinking about something because of the work that we've done? So that's the bit I think that's hard to kind of bring together sometimes. So that's something that I'm going to be looking hopefully to reintroduce this year, so we can start to recapture that. So I'd say there's kind of 3 levels in each section. There's the outcomes, those really kind of like what we're trying to achieve here, the end ultimate goal. The outputs and things that we can kind of look at the correlations and see, you know, if we're doing more here, is it having an impact there? We can't prove that outright, but it's good to see the correlation, even though it's not cause and effect. And then if we can get a bit of that more of that causation by doing some more targeted measurement and gathering feedback from a cross section of colleagues around the connection between our campaigns and what we're doing and those outcomes. So coming back to my first point, connect the dots is one area we're looking at. We're looking at our leader-led engagement, and key measures around what leaders are doing and the impact it is having. So, you know, how much are they getting out there? Are they interacting with people? What are they interacting about? And then what is the feedback on that? And then we're looking at internal and external data sources with this one. So for those of you watching who might not have access to a lot of analytics, or you know, don't have much say in what goes into colleague surveys and things like that, which can be the case, you know, you can be quite creative and look at other data sources that exist. So you don't have to do the data gathering yourself. One great place to look for feedback and data is Glassdoor. It's largely anonymous, so people are really quite honest about, you know, what they feel about the organisation and leaders in the organisation. But you do get a really, really good view there, and you can get scores around, you know, trust in leaders, and then approval of the CEO, as well as whether people would recommend it as a good place to work. So I find it's a really good place to get some good data from. We've also previously were looking at, there was a lot of transformation in the business, so we were looking at what we were doing to support that transformation and whether it was having a positive impact. So first of all, were we delivering the things that we needed to deliver in terms of channel changes and communications, and then what were the scores around change and communication of change. So that's no longer going to be one of the main bits of the dashboard, because we're kind of coming to the end of some of those things, and I'm going to be moving that in to connect the dots. And then we're going to look at the impact on our culture. So what are the key things that we want to kind of drive and have as dominant parts of our culture, and what activities have we been delivering to support that? So that's another part of our dashboard. So, you know, if you're looking at, for example, being a performance-driven organisation or a caring organisation or whatever it might be, if you're doing work in communications to support that, it's really good to track any indicators you can see, for example, from surveys or going out and gathering feedback around, is that change happening? We also have a culture survey that happens annually in the organisation as well. So we look at that as another data source, and we can look at that in comparison with things like our colleague engagement survey and see, are they heading in, you know, do they kind of fit alongside each other, and does that confirm what we're feeling about our culture?
It's really interesting. So the way that you're setting up the new dashboard, and this was the same for the current dashboard evolving, is very little of it is about communications, actually, right? Most of it, all of it, is about what the business is trying to achieve. Like, to your point,
exactly,
is the
it's how we're supporting the business. It's how we're supporting the business, and then we will show things that we're doing in communications that connect with those business outcomes, because this is a strategic dashboard. What we were trying to do, I think, before with the dashboard, you know, we're always learning, aren't we? So I feel like I was trying to do too much with the dashboard and trying to cram too much information in there for too many different people. So I focused on that being a strategic dashboard to use with, you know, with senior stakeholders, to use to help with strategic planning and recommendations. It also includes, in addition to the dashboard itself and the 4 segments I've got on there, we've also got an executive summary now, which just gives an overall view and then a little bit of an overview of what we're doing and recommendations and insights from the data, just on one page. So if a leader doesn't have time to look at anything else, it gives them that kind of that in a nutshell. And then what I've done is I've stripped out more of the operational measurement, which is actually really important to us in comms as well, to see, did that email perform well? What content is getting through in our newsletter? What do we need to change there? Are emails the right way to get these kinds of messages out to this group? And they're all really, really important things to be looking at too as a team. Leaders might not care so much about the details, but we need to know. So what we've done is we've produced a quarterly reporting pack, which is for use primarily by the comms team and all the business partners in the comms team, and then in my team as well for our kind of channels reviews. And we're looking at, for each channel and for our content strategy, what's gone well that quarter, what have we achieved against what we're trying to do with that channel, what content's working well, what isn't, who are we reaching with those channels, who do they work for, who do they not, and we also have some benchmarks in there as well. So we have some benchmarks that we get from, for example, for email and newsletters, we have our Poppulo benchmarks, and we really like to try and use the more detailed ones that we get through our customer success manager around industry and organisation size as well, because generic benchmarks for me don't necessarily give you huge insights, because you've got to compare like for like. So but the best benchmarks that you can create, and I think use the external ones as a starting point, are your own internal benchmarks. So, but you can only build those if you start to build data over time and do it consistently. And if you do that, you'll start to see trends, patterns, what good looks like in your organisation. We've recently, so we've done that for 2 quarters now. We're on the 3rd quarter of that more operational pack. And as we go, we continue to enhance and refine it. As part of that, somebody in my team's just done a review of how people use the news at a kind of annual level, and we're using that to help the team understand how much time they should be dedicating to news, what news performs well, and so on. So for that, we've seen, I think, the average news reader reads about under 3 articles a week. So, if you're churning out 50 articles a week, then it's a waste of time. And actually, you're also diluting the impact of the interesting things, because they won't see them, and they'll give up looking for the the really important reads. So same with our newsletter. So that goes out through, we use Poppulo for that. Once a week, it's a global newsletter and it's targeted. So we have one edition, but you get a tailored version depending on where you work in the organisation. We've made some changes to that this year. It's still the same approach, but we've refined our editorial board meetings, and we've made some changes to the design. We've reset the guidelines for the team, because we've got all that data now from having this newsletter in place for the last few years to say what is performing well, what doesn't perform well, what volume of content we should be producing. And we go back to the external benchmark as a starting point to say, on average, I think it's 8 to 12 articles in an edition is generally kind of a good level. People won't click on all of those necessarily, but they'll get visibility of that content at least. Well, if you have 25 articles in there, people aren't necessarily going to have the time to scroll through and look at any of that. So we've used the data to say, look, it was creeping back up again. It's not having a positive impact on engagement. If you really want people to read this story and this story, it's just diluting the impact of them. So we've reset those guidelines, and we've shown what content performs well on that channel, what people want to read about, what kinds of positioning and content performs well, what kind of imagery performs well, and we've used all that to kind of refine and improve it. And we have seen an increase in click rates. It's only small, but it's an increase in click rates, and it's still
you need thousands of people, right? A small increase could mean hundreds more eyes, right? Maybe thousands more eyes looking at information.
Exactly. And we've been able to kind of say, for example, certain content, it's really important to you, it is important to the business as well, but actually if you target, first of all, choose your moments more wisely. So just pick and select a few key moments for that topic through the year. People are going to read it more, and also look at different ways. And this is the kind of content or approach that performs well. So through our review of content, what we found, not surprisingly, is that where we take we start with a human point, a person in the organisation, and it being about them, and then we subtly bring in elements about that topic. So, if you want to talk about DEI rather than writing an article about intersectionality or something like that, which would really appeal to people who are in your Pride ERG perhaps, but not the people who you want to convince, then we can see that the kind of article that will perform well and will get visibility of your subject matter is if you did an interview of that person, just learning about them and their role in the business, and then talk about how they're part of that employee resource group.
Love it, Sally. I love it. I'm always learning from Sally. I've got a page full of notes. And I've written some questions, which I'm going to hold to the end because I think they'll
Okay.
have a fun way to wrap it up. But let me play some of this back, because what I'm hearing, which I think people will be interested in, is, when we think of measurement and analytics and, building dashboards, we're thinking about stakeholder management, right? And we're thinking about future planning. But something you said here, which I think is a really important takeaway, is you're shaping channel governance based on the analytics, right? So you're looking at internal benchmarks and external benchmarks, and then saying to your immediate stakeholders, business partners working in comms, marketeers maybe, that actually, in order for us to get any kind of success, this is the rule book, right? This is the playbook we're going to use for channel A, B, and C. That's how we're going to roll it out. So earlier, when we said everything starts and ends with measurement, even the governance of a channel, right? Before we start talking about successful change initiatives, we're setting a channel up based on what you guys are observing. That's
Exactly.
right?
I think on our news feed, for example, I've talked about the newsletter, but the news feed on our intranet. I talked about this yesterday with some colleagues, actually saying, we've got some really good data here that we can be sharing with the team about. We've got too much content being produced on this channel, and actually, people only read 2.5 stories a week. So, and they were like, well, yeah, it'd be great to have some recommendations here so that we can say, right, okay, you don't have to only produce X number of articles a week. So I don't think you should be that kind of fixed about it, but just have that idea in your mind of what region you want to be operating in, and then you can focus your efforts on other things. So the other data from the internet tells us that there are more views of static sites, so the actual intranet pages, sites and content, than the news stories, which are kind of a moment in time, and getting people to think not everything is a news story. Actually, that is static content, and that is not hidden away, because the data tells us that people go to these sites anyway. They've got really high reach, and this is a smarter way to produce this content. We had an example around Christmas time where traditionally there's a kind of a business services team who they down tools over the Christmas period, and they normally they were doing a little news story telling people about their Christmas opening hours, which did not get many views at all, because it's not really a news story and it's a bit dull, right? So instead, we made sure that the content was there on the static page, and we had a little ticker appear on the homepage for a short period, so it wasn't in your face. That got, significantly more traction.
Interesting. That's funny, because I think I remember.
So I was just going to say, so now when we have similar things about outages and things, we say, well, this is what's worked in the past. And they go, instead of having a fight about it and going, well, no, I really want my news story, they go, actually, yeah, okay, great, let's do that.
Once I got I think it's when I was working with you, actually. I got sent from the Comms Heroes team a notepad, and on the front of the notepad, I lost it. I'd never got to use the thing. The front of the notepad, it said, "Can we please get this on the homepage?" but because of data, we're able to move on from those conversations. And like you say, it's about outcomes, right? Like most of the business partner conversations I have, you can quickly move from "I want this," right, to, well, if you want to achieve this, do it this way instead. Because you've got the data, because you've got the analytics. It's something that we talked about, but when we worked together, was the idea of the carrot and stick. If you want people to read your news story, no, that was it. News stories are the stick we beat people with, right? The carrot that gets them onto the channel is probably the stuff they actually need to do the job, right? I wish it was news that they come to the internet for. It's not, and it never will be. So we need to create channels that support those objectives, right? We want to achieve business outcomes. We want eyes on things, and we want to win hearts and minds. We need to make sure that we're giving people something, not just enticing them with the promise of the lunch menu or whatever it's going to be, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, that's the majority of the usage of our internet platform is to access apps and tools that people need to do their jobs, and this static content. And then the news does have really good reach, actually. And I think we need to be realistic about what level of news is actually a really good level of engagement in the news.
I think you're right, because we need to understand, and you know, I'd say this to anyone listening who's probably at the beginning of the journey, like understand what your audience does away from work. You know, how many people read a news app? How many people read a newspaper? How many people read news as part of their day-to-day lives? It's the same thing with a podcast, right? You know, you're often getting a very excited, you know, member of the C-suite come to you, go, I need a podcast. And you're like, okay, why? And they're like, you know, 20-minute chat about this thing. It's a really big thing. Everyone's going to listen to it. And then, you know, you kind of get to the conversation. We're like, when was the last time you listened to a podcast? Oh, I don't listen to. Well, why? They're not going to come on. So it's understanding what the audience do today. And then, like you say, the internal benchmarks are crucial there. So if you say, listen, we've got 30,000 people, but only 400 people read that, sounds dire. Right? But actually, if you say, look, our internal benchmarks say if you get 400 people reading that news story, that's a well-read news article, right? Yes, there are other ways to get that message out, but that shouldn't live in isolation anyway, right?
Exactly. And also thinking about different, like you talk about different audiences and the next generation coming into the workforce and the role that interactive content and social plays. I think it shouldn't be underestimated. A lot of senior leaders may not be comfortable with using social media, but it is a really important part of the channel mix as an opportunity to interact and collaborate. And we find, you know, if you spend time creating a podcast, we know from our data that our podcasts don't perform particularly well. It's a really nice idea. And, you know, the idea of it is like, oh, brilliant, a podcast, it should do great, but it doesn't necessarily. The amount of effort, if you look at the cost of producing it versus how much engagement you get in it, you actually have a much higher impact often just doing it, getting the leader to do, you know, a quick video on their phone and posting it onto social, or doing a quick update. I think that, you know, and that doesn't cost you anything at all. And we know from the data that those things perform better on the whole.
Is this a new scoop, Sally, that you're going to try and get the National Grid CEO on TikTok?
Keep
Love
trying.
to see it. Let's make it happen. That's good. Okay, let me play back a couple of bits in this section because I think they're really important. Then the data sources point and the dashboards point. So you guys, you're building and would recommend and advocate for two versions of core measurement. One is a strategic dashboard that is for executive leaders, board members, senior stakeholders, and that's focused on the transformation, the strategic connecting the dots, the culture piece, the big picture.
And leaders,
right. And then the second one was the operational dashboard, which is for people like you and me, people who are on this webinar right now. And that includes impact, reach, information on how to achieve business objectives using communications methods, right?
And the types of content that perform well as well, what people are talking about on social and looking for patterns and trends in that data.
Okay, and let's offer some practical tips there then for people. So if they're starting at the beginning and they're going to look into creating these two things, the strategic one, what are the key data sources for something like that?
Okay, so the top data sources for me would be a colleague survey, any additional pulse surveys that you may run in the organisation or want to do, running quick polls as well on social channels or in your newsletter. That's a great way to capture feedback. Using things like, you know, whatever approved survey tool you've got, like a Survey Monkey or Microsoft Forms, or use, I think, obviously Poppulo actually have a quick survey tool as well, but built into email as well. So you can, you know, whatever you've got access to, you can capture informal feedback or do it in a more structured way. For example, you know, with a project where we're making improvements for a channel, we might use something like a Net Promoter Score question and gather it through a Microsoft form. We can communicate that to be completed via email, via QR codes on digital signage, that kind of thing. So look at different ways to get that out to different groups of people who might not be on their computers all the time. Could even have a printout on on the notice board of the QR code that they can access, so they can fill in, give you feedback. We don't do this all the time, but we did run this again last year, was to do a kind of a communications audit. So every now and again, if you feel right, we need to kind of take a big look at how we're performing, and you know, and what we've done originally when we established our new set of channels. We reran that, so we brought in an external independent organisation to help gather that feedback. So we knew that it was following robust methodology, that it was being reviewed by somebody who was completely objective about it, and we designed it in a way that we got balanced feedback from our colleagues. So thinking about the digitally disconnected, so people who do not have regular access to desktops as well, or mobiles. We ran focus groups in person on site for those groups only. We didn't spend money on running focus groups for people who could gather feedback from in different ways. We did run some online focus groups for some of those groups as well, and ran surveys. So that was another data source. You've got your analytics tools for your channels. Don't think that it's all tactical, because you can get some really good strategic data out of those as well, looking at the behaviours over the long term, for example. One example that I wanted to share today was around how you can use the data. So I'm going a bit off here, but before I forget, while we're talking about it, using the data around usage of your channels to create business case for investment in other channels, or investing in programs to improve the channel for a specific group. So having access to data that told us that certain groups of employees did not open emails, did not open newsletters, did not visit the internet regularly, did not go on social, and it's the same group, that we were able to go, okay, right, just keep sending emails to this group, it's not going to get your message across, right? This is not the right way to reach these people. So we were able to use that data to feed into business cases, or to focus our efforts and prioritize certain pieces of work. So that work to improve the US field engagement wouldn't have happened without that data, right? So to have that information and say, right, and this is why we need to make these improvements. And we've now got 40% of that group are now able to access our internet and access it. So it's a big improvement. Yeah, so it's a big improvement. And then we're also able to look at, with that group, creating a business case for digital signage. Again, not putting it in where it's easy to put it in our offices, but actually thinking about where the gaps are and where it's needed. So from that data, we could see where they were quite clearly. That was fed into the business case, and investment has been made, and signs are being rolled out across multiple field locations in those parts of the business, which is absolutely fantastic. We're getting great feedback as well on that channel. So
that's amazing. So loads. Go on.
So sorry, coming back to other data sources, and just trying to think if I've forgotten anything.
I don't think you have. I mean, you did talk about external ones as well, like Glassdoor. I think that's an important one to remind people. Yeah. And then probably
also events. So you can look at things like town halls, either in person or online. You can take data from, well, first of all, you've got reach, which is an output around how many people have attended, but actually gather feedback about how useful people found it. Did it help meet an objective that you were trying to achieve from that event? Ask them, get them while they're there, run quick polls, or get a QR code up quickly at the end of the event, and gather that feedback while you've got people and it's fresh in their mind. And then take the data from something that I did actually during the pandemic. So we ran lots of events around updates really regularly from leaders, and we were analysing all of the questions that were coming in and looking for patterns and topics that were really standing out on, was this topic continuing on, and is it not being addressed properly? Are those things now not a problem anymore? These things are being talked about are more and more important, and that is really valuable. And then looking at that alongside things like what people are saying on your social channels as well. So not just looking at the number of people who are visiting it, but what are they talking about? What's the sentiment? So we also look at that on our social media now.
Yeah, that's good. That's really great. And I think what you said there about quick polls is really important. We do this with our town halls. We do quarterly town halls at Poppulo, and they always happen on a Wednesday. The very next day, we we do a quick poll survey, ask standard questions, all anonymized. What did you think? We get like a net promoter score of the event. But really, the detail we want to get into is like, is it working for you? Do you get what you need from it? What's missing? And naturally, you know what it's like, Sally. If you ask people like, what did you love and what did you hate? You get way more comments on the latter, right? So like,
Oh yeah.
But we've made changes. I joined in October 22. My first town hall was in January 23 that I ran. And I think the way that we produce the sessions has changed in terms of the production. We've managed to save a bit of cost, but still deliver information people need. We've managed to change our approach to question and answer sessions, which people asked us for. And then naturally, the way we address certain topics has been shaped by what people have told us. So couldn't agree with that point more. And you also made a really important point about, because we talked a lot about the quantitative side of research. You talked about focus groups there as well, quick focus groups, being able to add that qualitative side of things.
Yeah. And asking questions, so Q&As, looking at what people are asking questions about, what comments are coming up in the chat, in events, that kind of thing. And you might think, oh my gosh, that's a huge amount of information, or the free text that you might get out of your colleague engagement survey. There are loads of tools out there you can use to analyse that. If you've got your survey provider might do that for you, but also, if you're doing internal things yourself, you think, I don't have the money to spend on something like that, you might have access to an approved generative AI tool, where as long as it's secure, and I think that's my only caution here, is if you've got access to an internal tool that is secure, you can use prompts quite cleverly to save you a lot of time analysing free text. So tell me, what are the key themes coming out of this? What's the sentiment of this? What people are saying here? And it will do the hard work for you.
Yeah, and I understand that your IT and security team have come up with something called Grid GPT. Is that right? So you've got an internal.
That's right. Yeah, we've got an internal tool as well.
That's great.
Yeah, but there may also be, you may also in an organisation have access to Copilot in the future as well. Yes. And again, that will be secure within your firewall, and it's not going to be sending out your data into the public domain. And there'll be other tools like that as well out there in the future, I'm sure.
And then so that's data sources with a couple of rabbit holes, which we welcome, Sally, here at Poppulo. On the strategic dashboard, if I'm starting from scratch and building an operational dashboard, and again, just to remind people, that's the stuff that's focused on reach and news views, stuff that helps you achieve business outcomes. But primary audience for that group is going to be business partners, right? Communicators. Yeah. What are the data sources for that kind of dashboard?
Well, that's going to be more from your analytics tools, quite frankly. So, for example, we'll do something around how our email is being used. And we start again, although it's more tactical, still looking at what we're trying to achieve with the channel. Yeah. So what are the outcomes in our own content and channel strategy? What we're trying to do? Is it about increasing reach? Is it about, increasing click-throughs on our newsletter? Is it about increasing engagement in certain topics and so on? And we look at all of that and look for trends. An interesting one that we're looking at the moment is not a Poppulo channel, but with our social media, it's probably a good example that we're looking at. The amount of collaboration that goes on the platform. So how many people work across different communities, how much dependency we have on a small group of people using the platform. So obviously you want more people to be using it interactively, and how many people use it interactively as opposed to passively. Yes. So we look at those things and track them.
Interesting. No, that's great. That's really good. I'm conscious of time because we're getting towards the end, and I've written down a couple of quick fires, which I think will be helpful for people.
Okay.
Let's move towards a couple of minutes, if we can, on how now that you've done all this work, now you're in a place where you've transformed the way that we talk about measurement in National Grid. How are leadership responding to it? When you guys are sitting down at the table now, pitching a new campaign, are you seeing a difference from where you were to where you are today? Have you got any examples?
Well, we have a campaigns team, and they're responsible for delivering big strategic campaigns across the organisation. My team work really closely with them. So we wanted to do something differently with our strategic campaign, and we used the data that we've got around engagement and reach and channels effectiveness for different groups to say, look, we need to focus on these groups and put them first in the campaign. We need to spend more time on leadership engagement and leaders getting out and talking to these groups as part of the campaign, and that having that data to help make that case meant that the plan was agreed and delivered.
Love that. They're just waving you through now. Sally on the dashboard, give her the money, just keep moving on. Love it. And then the other example you gave actually already was, like you say, the digital signage in the States.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. So that obviously we don't invest in the digital sign. It doesn't come from our budget. The digital signage infrastructure comes from the budget from the business units where they're located. So, we needed to demonstrate real value to the business of implementing these. So yeah, it was a fundamental part of the business case.
You're in good company, I think, Sally. Doing some research as part of this webinar, and I've already mentioned the Gallagher State of the Sector report. When I was at the launch, they were talking around the numbers. I think are, they're growing. 70% of strategic communicators are using measurement to provide return on investment data for comms. That's up 18% year on year. 52% of strategic communicators using measurement to request investment for comms, up 23% from last year. I mean, we said it before, but I'll say it again, right? It all starts and ends with measurement, right?
It does, and you've got to think about it all the way through. You can't just kind of go at the end of the year, right, I'm just going to measure how we did this year. You've got to think about it before you start planning anything. When you're creating your strategy, part of that strategy should be how are we measuring what we're doing, and then the same with every campaign, and you should be looking at how you're doing as you go. If you think about it in the sense of agile ways of working, people talked about this in the past in comms, that have agile ways of working in comms. You can not apply it to the nth degree, but just think, as I'm delivering a campaign over time, checking in and going, are we doing the right things? Do we need to change direction here, and using that measurement as you go?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, Sally. Right, you ready for these quick fire questions? Threatening you with apology, dog in the background.
Go ahead.
Just so you know, absolutely live. Nothing I can do about that, people. That's just going to happen. I'm just going to talk louder and hope that you don't hear it. So, quick fire questions. There might be someone on the call who doesn't even know where to start, Sally. What advice would you give to someone there? Like, we don't do any measurement at the minute. If we do, it's piecemeal. Where do I even start?
Okay, start with your strategy, first of all. What are you here for as a team? What are you going to be focusing on? Where do you want to be? How are you going to contribute to the business? Get that written down, and then break it down into kind of chunks. What are the key areas that you're focusing on? It might be 3 or 4 things that are part of your strategy. And then for each of those, think, okay, how am I going to get there? How do we know that that's been achieved? And look, and at the same time, look at what you've got available to you as well, and then start to plug that in, and then go, where have I got gaps? Okay, but we still really need to measure this, and then consider introducing new measurement techniques to fill those gaps. So start small and just get into a regular rhythm of doing that measurement. So commit to how frequently you're going to do it. I'd just start with quarterly. That's enough just to get that going. And then, if you've got the time and the commitment and the resources to do more, go for it. But just start with doing that and commit to doing that. Within what you're measuring, always have an outcome measure for each of those elements of your strategy. You can also have loads of reach and output measures as well. There's nothing wrong with those, but they need to kind of supplement and run alongside the outcomes. That's really important. And then what's the other thing I wanted to say? Feedback. Who are you getting your feedback from? Make sure that if you're capturing colleague feedback, running surveys, make sure it's representative. So, there's some really good tools out there. I think it's Qualtrics have got a free calculator online where you can look at sample sizes. So you don't have to be a customer of Qualtrics to use it. And it's really fantastic because if you're running a survey, you want it to be statistically significant, the numbers that you're sharing back, especially if you're sharing this reporting back with anybody who is in C-suite or senior leader or working in finance. They want to know that this is reliable data. So use a tool like that. You'll find actually that for a larger group of people, if you're new to this, you don't actually need that big a sample for it to be representative. However, if you want to break it down to the next level and you want to know, oh, well, that department or that business unit's got this, you might need more data, you might need more people. And if you're going out and asking people in a survey, always ask more than what you think you're going to get, because people are busy, and remind them before the deadline. And you will get a flurry at the end.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, does that help?
Massively helpful.
Yeah.
Next quick fire question is, Sally, I'm too busy firefighting all the time. My stakeholders are too demanding. I don't have the time for measurement. What's the answer to that?
Make the time, because you will save time down the line. You will have less firefighting to do, I assure you.
You can say no more as well, can't you? Like if you have demanding stakeholders, measurement is like, it's a shield, right?
Exactly. Or just think about all the times you've been trying to reply to somebody and you think, oh, do I write this? Do I write that? I don't know about you, but I procrastinate a bit anyway. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, is that the right way to say it? And actually, I've just got much more clarity in my own mind about what I'm recommending to people, and I'm more confident in it. So I get to the point faster, and then they go, yeah. And because you're more confident, they have confidence in you as well. So they're more likely to agree faster.
Okay, last quick fire question then, Sally, is what are your 3 key takeaways for the audience today? I think the first one you just said, right? Make time in your
Yeah, make the time is the first one. Second one is measurement's not an afterthought. It's part and parcel of what you do in comms. You might not be a numbers person, that's okay. But it is a really important part of what we do. Check through your campaign, think about it at the start, set what you're trying to achieve. And also, sometimes getting the results will take longer. So don't expect to have all the answers, and set those expectations with your stakeholders that, yeah, they want something to be embedded in the organisation. That behaviour change is not going to take 3 weeks. That's going to take 2 years to get to. So set that expectation up front. So we'll be tracking this over this period of time, and we will report back to you. And that, I think that's really important. And then finally, just be smart about analytics. So try and save yourself time and effort where you can. So use what you've already got. If you've got ideas, you think, wouldn't it be great if I could get that out? Share it with your vendors, your suppliers, and other people may want the same too. And they go, that's a great idea, and add it to their analytics tool. So it's always worth asking. And then generative AI, which we talked about already, can be a massive time saver in terms of, first of all, analysing those free text comments, qualitative data, but also if you need to write an executive summary, you've got loads and loads of kind of insights to say, right, what are the top 3 things? And it can really help save you time in kind of just getting your thoughts simplified and into a good state to share with senior stakeholders.
Love it. Sally, before we wrap up, I know, because I've been in a position before, that you're there talking about the work of a great group of people. Do you want to give a shout out to your team members, your direct team members? Because I know they support you in creating all of the great work you've talked about. And then I'm going to tell everyone to follow you and follow all of them.
Sorry, I actually had an air, because we're live, I just had an aeroplane fly really low over my house. So could you please repeat the question?
So I know what it's like when you're presenting the work of a whole team sometimes, and you want to give them a shout out. I'd love to give you 20 seconds to do that. Just give us the names of the colleagues in your team, and I'd encourage everyone to find them all on LinkedIn. They're all geniuses. Tell us your team names, Sally.
Oh gosh, yeah. I don't want to forget anybody here, so this is going to
just
be a
go
bit
for your team. Yeah, your direct
team. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I would like to say everybody in the National Grid Colleague Comms Engagement team has an important part to play in this measurement. This is not all my work. This is everybody's work across the team. So I just want to set that out. First of all, definitely team effort. The people in my direct team who are really also all really passionate about measurement and play part in this are Michelle Marston and Simon Fitzpatrick on my Grid Home team, and Liat Hughes, who is our kind of in-house editor and writer and content expert, and Anna Pass, who is our digital channel manager, who looks after our other channels surrounding our internet, including Poppulo.
Dream team, Sally. You're all a dream team. I'd encourage everyone to follow every single one of those people because they are geniuses. Sally, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully everyone has taken a lot away from the conversation today, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andrew. It was lovely talking to you.
Thanks, Andrew.